Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. My guest today is LaWanna Bradford. She's a powerhouse serial entrepreneur, global leader, media personality, and 5 times international best-selling author. Her work accelerates growth, innovation, and market positioning for federal agencies, private enterprises, and entrepreneurs worldwide. She's the recipient of the prestigious Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award for dedicating over 40,000 volunteer hours to advancing women and supporting initiatives that uplift and empower them. She's also the producer, director, and host of 3 shows on E360TV.com. Hello, LeWanna, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Hi, Leticia. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited. Every time I read a bio like that, I'm thinking, how does she get to do all of these things and then look so beautiful at the same time? Thank you for being here. And, I'm always very intrigued by origin stories, by the beginning of it all. So I want to hear a little bit about your younger self and what were you passionate about and did you dream about becoming when you were that little girl?
Wow, okay, going way back. So
Yes.
as a little girl, I actually dreamt of becoming a physician. And I don't know why, but I was specifically targeted on being a cardiologist. I don't know. I just cared about people. I thought touching the heart was the way to go. And so when I went to college, I did study pre-med, and then the second year in decided I don't want to do this. And so I literally went into my advisor's office, looked at the course catalogs, and said, what can I major in and still get out in 4 years? And so because I was heavily science and math, I realized, okay, well, I can go into sociology because I love to read. It gives me the social science element of the world. But then using my analytical side of the house, I had an emphasis in statistics. And so I actually came out of college working for the Department of the Defense as a statistician. So I worked on all the manpower models and as it related to satellite communications, and I'm dating myself, fiber optics before it was a big thing. And at that time, I was always very interested in business. And my good friend came to me and he said, LaWanna, I have this idea about starting a business, which was a licensed sporting apparel called Pro Starter Sports. And it was traditional brick and mortar, and we got into business and built it to a multi-million-dollar business. In fact, the highlight of it was we sponsored Andrew Maynard, who was a welterweight boxer at Caesar's Palace against Tommy Hearns. So to the listening audience that know anything about boxing history, that was a big deal. But unfortunately, with a lot of business, you're excited and growth is happening so fast that you end up imploding. We couldn't meet the demand. And so fast forward, I still stayed in business, but also I was a dualpreneur, continued to work within the government sector. And then from there, worked for the Olympic Committee. So that was another highlight is working as a budget analyst for the Olympics for 2.5 years. And then ended up working in the executive ranks with mass transit. Got out of corporate, decided I wanted to do my own thing. And that's when I started the consulting side, as well as my brother had a residential mortgage company. And so I bought into that, and that's how I ended up having 2 companies. The residential turned to the commercial side of the house. So the Bradford Group, were a commercial investment mortgage company. And then I have the Bradford Group Consulting, where we do business management consulting, helping people to stay relevant in changing markets through strategy, performance management, and building relationships. So
Wow,
that's
that's
my
very
backstory.
rich. Well, but you were, I'm going to give you kudos to you. You summarize an incredible journey. I think you win the prize for the most concise. You can tell you're in strategy, but I love the turns of that. And so I want to try to always discover those moments where you say, I'm doing this, I'm good at this, but I want to change. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck. Like you say, okay, I can keep doing this forever. A lot of people find that niche and it pays the bills. They're not necessarily unhappy, but they maybe have that little voice saying you could do more. It sounds to me like you listen to that voice and follow and pursue different things. Can you share a little bit if any of that is true or not, or how did you
Yeah.
decide to kind of say, let me just change gears and do something else?
Well, my father gave me one of the best pieces of advice that I've used both as an entrepreneur and as a corporate professional. And that was find something in life that you love so much that you would do it for free and you'll never work a day in your life. And
Mm,
I literally have enjoyed every single position I've had because I strategically picked every position. I always
mm,
went to interviews looking at the win-win. Yeah, it was a job, but what was I going to get out of it besides a paycheck? If I didn't see that it could bring me joy or tap into my gifts and talents to help me grow, then I didn't want it. I didn't care how much the paycheck was. I had to enjoy getting up every single day doing what I did. And you get to a certain point, it's like, okay, I think it's now time to move on and be willing to feel that fear of stepping into something new and doing it anyway.
mm. I love that. Because that part of finding the win-win, and I think it's the strategist in you that allows
Yeah,
you to or allow you, yeah, because it's sometimes it's like you have to be strategic and learning to say no, but that fear, as you say, prompts you to like, are you crazy? You're not going to say yes to this, and sometimes we get into circumstances that we know from the beginning that are not the best situations for us, but just saying yes is just easier.
exactly. Yes,
I
like
love that.
when I left corporate, my father, who I just lost in September, he
Oh,
had been my
sorry.
mentor. Thank you. He had been my mentor and my coach my whole life. And when I left corporate, he's like, "Are you crazy? You're an executive. What are you doing?" I said, "It's time." But he came from, the old school, right? You work in a career forever and ever and ever, and you don't think of changing. So that was really hard for him to understand that I would be willing to walk away from something like that.
Mm. I totally understand that. And then you also have a fascinating, journey. We'll talk about the books because I definitely want to hear about that, but also about, you work the private and public sector. And now more than ever, that's something that, given the current circumstances, some people feel, well, government is safe. And maybe they go into those kind of positions because of that. Not that I'm saying that you definitely, I know you didn't go that position because it was safe. But it was like people see it separate. Sometimes it's either you have a career in public service or you have a career in the private sector, but you intertwine both of them.
Yes.
So can you share a bit more about that experience on the private versus public?
I think nothing is ever safe. I mean, everything has its risk, and I think whatever people do, you have to evaluate, what that risk may be to you, and always have a plan B. What if because I've worked in government where I did get hit with a reduction in force. I've actually worked in private where we did have mergers and my position was impacted. So how do you take the waves of change and still ride so that you can be your best self? That's a moment in time. It doesn't define you, but it shows you who you are and the strength that you have. Because I believe in life, as we go day to day, we're being, I guess, peppered with things that are building up, right? Strengthening us, but we don't know that we have those those roots in us until it's that time of challenge. And then we're like, whoa, I didn't realize I had all this. So you start pulling from that experience and from those lessons learned and words of wisdom that a parent or coach may have shared with you.
That's so very, I like the thought of the riding the waves of change. Did it ever, but I'm curious too on like, what would your advice be to somebody that is convinced? Because I know there are a lot of people out there, and I always try to inspire through this podcast, of course, to say, well, but I've invested X amount of years into, I've committed to this, like this career in public service, and I cannot go to private, and vice versa. What advice would you give somebody that thinks like that?
I would tell them that life is happening right now, and all you have is the now. So you can choose to live in fear and uncertainty, or control the narrative of your own life and find out what really brings you joy. Are you able to grow, and are you able to be expansive and take up space wherever you are? If you feel that you're being contained or restricted, why do you want to live like that? I mean, to me, that's like modern day shackles. Release the shackles wherever you are. If you're entrepreneur, if you're in government, or if you're private sector, release the shackles, be you, be a contributing part of humanity, and leave an indelible mark.
And that you've done, because not everybody receives the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. You obviously are a philanthropist. You give back to the community over 40,000. I'm sure that whomever you wrote that is probably now way more than the 40,000 hours. So share with us a little bit of that, what that honor represented, how did it feel, but also the work you do as a philanthropist.
Getting that was just amazing to get one of the highest honors here within the United States, and to be recognized by something that I was doing behind the scenes. So someone was watching and actually put me in for the nomination. And it was interesting because I get a knock at the door and I'm like, what is this? And this package I have to sign, and I open it up. I'm like, oh my God.
So, wow.
So it felt amazing. It was probably one of the greatest highs that I've had in my life. And how that came about was, as I told you, I've always loved and been interested in how businesses connected. And if you had told me 10 years ago that I would have taken that and repackaged it to help small businesses, especially women, I would have said no. I just really like the business side of it. I really don't care about the people side of it, if that makes sense. And in the past 10 years, I've been investing a lot of time in women and helping women to rise up. First, identifying who you are, but not what you do. We tend to describe who we are by the hats we wear. Well, that's not you. And once you're able to identify that, what's your voice? Why are you even here? Why should you matter? Why should people lean in and care? How do you show up for your family, your community? And that's where I started to give back, and taking all of the training that I did from a corporate standpoint and translating it to women in their personal lives and to women in business. And I just did that as a give back. I also partnered with the SBA and the SCORE, Service Corps Retired Executives, donating time there, as well as Goodwill. Most people don't realize that Goodwill actually works with developing entrepreneurs and small businesses, and training on that platform. Again, it was a give back. And that's how those hours just started to accrue. And now my organization, which is called Celebrate You, Embracing Total Wellness, is all about helping women realize that we are a composite of our mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial well-being. And when we can get those together, it doesn't mean we're always on point, but when we can get those together, then we can be that master change agent that we want to see in our families, our community, and the world. And now my message is touching over 10 nations around the world.
impressive and inspiring. And so I will, I have to ask because you're also, a producer and media producer and all these things and a speaker. And I was actually speaking at a conference recently, and people, the talk had a name which wasn't DEI, but it was something along supplier diversity of sorts. I forget now, and we had a half an hour conversation on how to change the name. And I would say I was one of those that oppose. I'm like, we cannot be now relabeling things to, make it okay. And we are living in that moment right now where, especially in the US, if you say women initiative, women entrepreneur, or that minority or diversity, now people are like want to relabel everything. And it's a little scary to me because at the end of the day, the root cause or the cause itself hasn't changed. The problem is still there. The issue is still there, but now we just are going to struggle with how we're going to tackle these issues. So I'm very curious to hear your take on this.
Yeah, I think a rose by any other name is still a rose, right? The issues haven't gone away. It doesn't matter who has the pen, who writes the executive order. We still have deep-seated issues in this country and around the world. And I think it first starts with each one of us. Sometimes we tend to look at, well, what's happening at the federal level and what are they doing? Well, I turn and ask people, what are you doing? What are you doing in your community? Are you supporting small business owners in your community? You see that they may be impacted by these legislative changes. Well, what are you doing to ensure that the money still circulates within your community? What type of conversations are you having at the table with your children so that they don't look at the world through a limited lens, but a more expansive lens? Because I think we have more control and more power than we believe, but we've got to stop feeding into the narrative and start shaping the narrative.
And you're a perfect example because if you are doing something behind the scenes and that you're doing because it's your passion and you love it and you like to make input, yet that doesn't mean the world doesn't notice and that somebody got inspired by your actions to recognize the work. And I think that's something that people always want to know. I find like, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And it's something that has to change, a mindset that has to change. And I know that through your own work, you try to do that, not only the philanthropy, but the shows you produce and direct and host. So as I understand, you have 3 shows: Power of the Pen, Choose to Challenge, and Business and Financial Raw Talk. Yes. Diversity of thought. You have a little bit of everything there. So tell us a bit more about each one of them.
Yes, now this is interesting. Sometimes you never know how your gifts and talents will lead you down a certain path. And this was not by design. I did not have any aspirations to be a TV show producer or host, podcast, nothing ever. But 5 years ago, the Women's History Month international theme was Choose to Challenge. And I said, well, I would like to be somehow a part of this initiative. How can I be a part of it? And I thought, well, this was actually paralleling with the centennial anniversary of women's right to vote here in the US. So I said, I'm going to interview 21 women from different nations, the US, Canada, UK, Uganda, and Jamaica. We're going to talk about expressing your voice, what the vote looks like here, what the vote looks like there, challenges that women still have, what are our similarities. And I just aired those on Facebook. Well, a streaming network saw them, reached out to me and said, we like this. Do you mind if we re-air them on our platform? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm not thinking anything like that. Sounds good. Well, they came back because the viewership was higher than they expected. And they asked, would I be willing to do an ongoing series on the show? And I'm like, well, let's stretch myself. Let's say yes. So I said yes. And my very first guest, believe it or not, for Choose to Challenge was George Floyd's uncle. So that show goes that deep.
Wow, that's
so
incredible.
I will talk about everything from pay inequities, the things that was going on there with police brutality, um, trafficking, sex trafficking, mindset issues. That's the platform of the show. But I wanted to make sure that it was done in a positive way. I didn't want to get into just the back and forth that you see on many shows. And that was what was so brilliant working with George Floyd's uncle is his message was, okay, my nephew died. We recognize that. But what lessons can we learn? Let's identify with our own humanity. Where are our faults? How can we improve? So it was really a love message at the end. And
Wow, that's incredible.
And then from there, I had one of the things I love to do as far as the give back. I'm also a financial analyst. Was doing annual financial wellness boot camps for women, and the same TV network said, well, you're doing this all the time. Have you thought about doing some sort of a business or finance show? And I thought, oh, okay, business and financial raw talk.
I love it.
And then with the books, because I was involved in collaborative books, I thought, well, let's try a third show. I love to read. So everything dealt with my areas of passion from advocacy to business to reading. It's nothing I don't like to do. So it's natural, it's easy. Every show is fun, even when I have difficult interviewees.
Yeah, I imagine. But I love the fact that you touch upon the areas of passion because I've said it for my own personal experience. I've had guests like you that touch upon that say when you align what you do with your true purpose, with your true talents, then the energy, instead of draining, it's actually creative energy. So you have
Yes.
more off. So I started this saying, oh my God, because it's true. You see all the things you do, and I say you do a lot. And people ask me the same thing. How do you get that much energy to do a podcast and run a company? And I say, but I don't feel it. Yes, I'm busy, but I enjoy doing it, such as like what you are saying right now. And then if you align what your passions are with what you're doing, then it just really it starts flowing instead of resisting. When we don't like what we do, people like drag it, right? And we complain and we say, no, I don't, I said Monday again. I said Monday again. We leave for Fridays. I always say people leave just to be Friday so that they have 2 days so that they can complain again at the beginning of the week.
Exactly.
So it's crazy, but I think also that the fact that you've done things, and I'd love for you to comment on this, it almost seems like the opportunity finds you, like people say, well, you have to be prepared. So when the opportunity comes, you're there. But there are other people say, yeah, but the opportunity never comes. And like maybe that's dreaming, like you seem to have found a rhythm where the right opportunity also finds you.
Yeah, one of the things that I always say is I really believe that when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. So you first have to have a vision, a line of sight for you. Don't live by accident. Live on purpose. And when you're living on purpose, you're always looking for how do I position for the next thing? And I think because you're emitting that type of energy, you automatically start attracting those opportunities. And they come in some of the most unexpected ways. And you have to be willing to say yes. And sometimes you're going to fall. I had never when I look back on my first shows, they were horrible. But I did it anyway.
Yes.
And I've gotten better and better and started to study the craft of interviewing on both sides of the mic. And, but it's come through willing to invest in myself.
Mm. And I think that we struggle with that a lot as human beings. Like, I know, I wanted to do a course and I've always also liked to learn. So I like that. But it's hard to say, let me invest. Like when you compare things and people say, this is too much money. And then you say, yeah, but how much do you spend on a dinner or shopping or doing something else? And then if you compound it, that could have gone towards you and your own, knowledge. And we people struggle with that. And you're a financial analyst, so you probably know where people struggle. But yeah, right. That we don't see it as a worth investment for whatever reason.
I think it's because we're not taught that. I mean,
Mm,
we tend to follow the traditional line, right? You go to school, you get a good education, and you get a job. No one
yes.
says, and then you keep learning, you keep expanding, you
Yes.
keep it growing, self-development. I know my parents didn't talk about that. They just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I checked all the boxes.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. My dad too. When I said I want to learn French, he was like, "What? What a waste of time!" And he's a learner too, but he's also Italian. So the Italian and the French have a little thing like, "Why would you learn French?" But then it proved to be the best investment. Like French has taken me places and that I could have never imagined. But I am totally with you in terms of the investing in yourself and just keep learning. It seems like there's something there for self development that is crucial.
I agree.
So you always say, how do I, you were saying, how do I position for the next thing? That's a mindset. So what is LeWanna positioning for right now? Like, what do you want to share? I know you have a successful company. You have many different initiatives you're working on. What do you want to share that maybe we haven't touched upon yet, or that you want to reinforce in terms of what you're doing right now?
I would say the one thing that I'm doing, and I would encourage all small business owners or entrepreneurs to do this, is repositioning to remain relevant. How do you do that in a changing marketplace? That's the one thing that's constant. And when change is happening so rapidly, this is unprecedented in our lifetime. How do you rebound? How do you, as I mentioned earlier about riding the wave? Well, you don't want to be on the sidelines wondering what's happening. You don't
Mhm.
want to be overtaken by it because you've opted to do nothing. You want to either learn how to ride the crest of the wave or be in front of the wave. So that's what I'm doing right now is I'm assessing, I'm evaluating what's happening. I'm looking at the industries that I'm in. What are the major players doing? What moves are they making? Because success leaves clues. And if I want to stay here and be my own legacy company, then I have to be willing to shift and adapt and be as agile and flexible as possible. And it's not going to happen by chance. It's going to happen by discipline and commitment and making sometimes those hard pivots.
Pivoting is hard, that's for sure.
Yes.
I think a lot of people struggle with it. I'm Venezuelan, so for 25 years we've been pivoting from a crazy government that we've
Mm,
had, and that we cannot, like seem to see the end of a nightmare. But it's important to not to be too attached with what we know. That's for sure. That's good advice you give. Like be ready to understand where we are at and flexible enough to change. That's for sure.
exactly.
Fantastic. So, I mean, you're such a great, you can tell you do this professionally because you are like on point. It's like, oh my God, this is good. There's so much ground to cover and we cover a lot. Um, so I always talk about what makes us tick. So when we have a good guest like you, we've kind of had colors of what makes you tick because it's part of your life, but also in the moments where it's harder to connect to your soul's essence. What do you do, or how do you reconnect to yourself?
My faith. I'm a woman of faith, and I think I have to find a way to get silent and quiet all the noise and remove the distractions. And my brother laughs at me because I walk every day and I call it meditation. So meditation and prayer time. And that's where I'm able to, I do it early in the morning. I just start getting downloads and I start processing what does it mean? Sometimes it's things for the now. It may be months from now where it'll start making sense. But that's what I need. I notice when I don't do that, my days go well, but they're not fluid, right? It feels like I'm sort of forcing things to happen. But when I take that time and do so unapologetically, I don't give it up for anyone. that's when my day goes better. So for me, I put God first, and then everything else will happen as it's meant to happen. And being able to accept when things don't go well. I think the biggest challenge that I ever faced in my life was losing my dad. And I'm now in that discovery of who LeWanna is without this amazing, brilliant cheerleader coach by my side. And I'm discovering her every single day because I don't know this person, but I'm willing to lean in and realize he's still here. I just can't touch him, but he's still here.
Well, I was about to say, well, whatever it is, because you're a person of faith, it is obvious that he's still there because you can feel his presence by talking to you. You can feel his wisdom by listening to you. So I think it's just understanding that the relationship has changed, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. Which
Yes.
I am sure it's a very. I'm blessed. My dad is 91, but and he's also been a cheerleader. So when you say those things, you know the inevitable is inevitable, and it's a scary thought. And I'm sure that it's a very difficult experience to lose a parent, especially if they were a mentor too, because there's some parents that you love them no matter what, but it's also somebody that has enabled you to grow in your professional life, not only in the personal life. That's even harder.
Yeah, it's a different you meet people who've lost parents, and I thought I didn't understand what a loss was, but I thought I kind of understood their journey. It's like, no, until you have to put the shoes on yourself, you have no clue. And I was blessed. My dad I didn't live for 94 years, but he lived for 94 years. And it was amazing. It was just absolutely amazing. And I got to share this with you. I found this when I went home. My parents lived in Arizona, and I was going through some of his things, and I found a photo because we both used to run marathons together. And we were running a marathon relay during a 3-year period. And there was a photo of him, 2 photos. One was him passing me the baton. And the other, I'm running, not looking backwards. And he was behind me with his hands up, like cheering me on.
Oh,
and
wow.
I just touched me. I thought, wow, Dad passed the baton.
Wow, that is amazing. Passing the baton. That's amazing. Well, you talk about building legacy before.
Yes.
And that's really what it's all about. It's the legacy, not only of our businesses, but how we run our businesses, and the legacy of the values we have been given and how we keep them going. And I love the fact that you mentioned faith, because just today I was reading of a new organization that is all about CEOs and like really putting God, like that's on the Christian faith. And I say, wow, that's great that there's more of this now, that people are not that afraid to bring God into the conversation and to praise him and to, because I think I've had many people that are also people of faith but there's something there that when you don't want to say it too out loud, right? It's some people I find they're very religious or spiritual, and they feel that they're going to be minimized if they are at a very high level in the business world, just by showing that side of them. So I love the fact that you actually brought it up and put it front and center, because I think a lot of people would resonate with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of who I am. I mean, I can't hide behind it.
Yeah, well, I love that. Well, LeWanna, I really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot. I've taken a lot of notes. People that followed my show know that if I do 2 pages back and forth, like I love everything we talked about, and I would definitely share your show in the show notes. And I know that you have inspired many, as you have inspired me today by being in the show. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Leticia. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And until a new episode of Back to Basics. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.